Well, hi everyone. My name is Jamie Brandis. I'm with the Colorado Small Business Development Center Network's Techsource Commercialization Program. Thanks for joining us today for the first of 3 proposal preparation workshops, and we're hosting as part of our new Red Team Review program. Red Team Review is an innovative pilot program that provides professional guidance and a review of a company's SBIR or STTR proposal prior to submitting it to the participating federal agency. The Red Team of SBDC specialists, led by Stephanie Amond, our presenter today, will provide guidance on proposal preparation, offer tools and templates, and finally take the perspective of the agency and apply evaluation criteria that's articulated in the agency's funding opportunity announcement. This is through a Red Team review. This allows the proposal to be seen with fresh eyes from a new perspective. After reviewing the team's comments, the applicant will have one last chance to edit his or her proposal prior to the agency's final deadline. The Red Team Review program is divided into 3 rounds in 2022 to focus on 3 separate agencies. This first one is with NASA, the second one is going to be with Department of Defense, and the third is with NSF. The application process has now ended for this first round, but you're welcome to sign up to be notified for the next 2 rounds. The link for that will be shared after today's webinar. I'll also put it in the chat in a little bit here. We did have overwhelming interest in this first round, and given that it's a pilot program, we were only able to select a few of those of you that applied. But thank you to everyone who did apply. We did notify everyone who did yesterday, so if you didn't receive that email, just let me know. And congratulations to the ones that were selected. Let's see. We do highly recommend there is a webinar tomorrow that's put on by NASA themselves. So if you do have specific questions you want to ask of the agency representatives there, we do recommend that you attend that webinar. I'll also send the link in the chat and following today's webinar for you to register for that if you'd like to. Very briefly, I'd like to introduce you to our Techsource Commercialization program, our statewide program for science and technology companies. We do focus on non-dilutive sources of capital, so that's where SBIR, STTR fits in. We also focus on technology commercialization. We help with R&D tax credits, IP protection, government accounting, and all sorts of things. Market research is a big one as well, so do reach out if you would like assistance in any of those areas. We do offer one-on-one consulting. We have different workshops and events, and we do some accelerator programs. So happy to have you involved if you are interested. Let's see, resources that we're able to offer are through assistance from SBA's FAST program. We have support from Visa, the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, the Minority Business Office of Colorado, as well as the City of Boulder. And just a few quick things about today's webinar. If you are interested in getting tapped into some of our resources, such as the consulting, please visit our website. It's sbdc-techsource.org. Again, we'll send that information out afterwards. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will send out a link to the recording as well as a copy of today's slides after. And then just a few housekeeping things. You're all on mute right now, but please enter any questions that you have into the chat. We are offering ample time for questions at the end of today's slides, so please do put those into the chat and we will have a moderated Q&A at the end. Now I would like to introduce you to Stephanie Amond, today's presenter. Stephanie is the managing partner of Arrowhead Solutions, which is a Gov IRG company. She is a full service solutions provider for government contractors. She founded Arrowhead Solutions in 2009. She had the goal of providing companies with the extra knowledge and manpower they need to succeed in the world of government contracting and startup culture. She specializes in capture management, proposal preparation, contract management, subcontracts and compliance, and basically anything that's not commonly available to smaller government contractors. She did want to fill that gap. So we're excited to have her here. She's been very involved in the small business community, moved to Salida, where she served on the Chamber of Commerce there, and has been involved on various committees and that type of thing to help small businesses. So Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today. I will turn it to you at this point to get this ball rolling.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about the NASA SBIR STTR program, or some people say SBIR. So specifically, we'll be talking today about this particular agency, Solicitation, which is currently open. And I want you to also be aware that I don't want to try to duplicate too much of what's going to be spoken tomorrow by NASA, but there probably will be some duplication. My goal here today is to really kind of talk about some of the things that we see in real life, some of the things that might be a little bit beyond the solicitation. And I really encourage you to gather questions and share them in the chat with Jamie so that we can talk a little bit later. Or if you have particular stories that you want to share or situations, the unique thing about NASA's program is that it's once a year. And I personally have been working these for about 15 years in Arrowhead, and our team has been working it for about 13 years. And so I haven't seen huge swings and deviations, but there are slight changes from year to year. So if you have done this in the past, specifically if you did it last year, there are a couple changes to be aware of. And you know, I know that NASA tends to point those out, so I'm not really going to be very specific on those minute changes, assuming that you were there last year. What I am going to be assuming that today is that perhaps you've never even participated in the SBIR STTR program at all. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to dive into a little bit about NASA. So again, I think thanks for being here. Our company are very excited about this time of year because there's so many SBIR STTR proposals out there and openings, and I'm really excited that there's so much opportunity because we've seen a lot of great success with this program and our clients over the years. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about what SBIR is, just to get everybody on the same page. And we'll talk a little bit about the overview of what the solicitation is. And as an FYI, NASA is different than the DoD, and DoD is different than the DOE, and they're all open right now. So we're going to be only talking about NASA. We'll talk a little bit about eligibility. I like to hammer that home a lot because people get very excited about this and they start going down this path, and then they come to find out that they're not able to propose for whatever reason. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Talk about the process. You know, how does NASA do this? What registrations are required specifically for NASA? What does the NASA proposal contain? You know, what does a whole proposal package look like? We'll specifically talk a little bit about budget. NASA's pretty nitpicky on detail, and we'll talk a little bit about strategies as well. So first, an overview of the program. So everybody just remember the word innovative. When we talk about SBIR, it's Small Business Innovative Research Program. So we're not saying high tech, we're saying innovative. So you don't need to be doing, you know, crazy quantum computing for undersea missions. we can just be doing some innovative work with cows on a farm. You know, this really is so broad. The STTR element of the program, they're combined, stands for Small Business Technology Transfer, and I'll talk about that a little bit. NASA does offer, they're one of the 5 agencies that does participate in offering STTR topics, and there is a difference between the two to be aware of. So again, I put tech in quotes because we're not saying high tech necessarily, but we're just looking for funding for early stage R&D. And this program is the largest source of early stage financing for small businesses in the United States. So it's just a huge bucket of money, and to crack the code to get in is a great place to be. It is a 3-phase program. What we'll be talking about today specifically is a phase 1 proposal. We won't be talking about phase 2 because you have to get through phase 1 to get to the phase 2, and the solicitation that's open right now is for phase 1. The SBA is the governing administration for the entire program. So there are 11 agencies that participate in the program, NASA obviously being one of them. And the SBA directs each agency's implementation of the SBIR policy, make sure that they're supporting the intent of the program, and then reports annually on its operation. And the last report that came out was in 2019. And if you're interested to ever see, how this is going, that's out there on the SBIR.gov site. And SBIR.gov is the main information link to the SBIR program, and the SBA runs that site. We'll talk a little bit about the goals of the program. This is really important when you're thinking about your approach for your NASA proposal. Obviously, we're looking for stimulation of technological innovation. So specifically, of all the agencies, maybe other than DARPA, NASA comes to mind as maybe the one being kind of on that cutting edge spear point of innovation because of their missions and their goals. And obviously, because of what they're doing, and so much of it is new, I mean, trying to inhabit the moon and Mars, there's obviously a lot of R&D that needs to be done. And they're not going to do all of that within NASA. So we go out to the small business community. We look for encouraging socially and economically disadvantaged companies to participate, to get a diverse group of people providing innovation to the agency. And the most important thing beyond just saying, hey, let's help out NASA is commercialization of these innovations. So the whole goal here is to do research and development phase 1, proof of concept via prototype demonstration in phase 2, and then going out and selling that technology to the general public, back to, in this case, NASA, just with not SBIR funds, or another government agency. And commercialization is becoming, in my opinion, somewhat easier in a way with the NASA element, because we have these commercial spaceflight companies now, like the SpaceX's and the Blue Origins and the other companies that support those companies. And there's just a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of cross-pollination between NASA and DoD. So, you could get phase 3 credit for each selling the exact technology you did for NASA, commercializing it, but you commercialize it to the military. So there's some interesting things, but the whole point here is to get innovation out into the market, whatever market that may be. And I love to reiterate the mission of the SBA's intent here. So the mission is to support scientific excellence and technological innovation through investment. So that's like really key word, is the government's investing here. They're investing their federal research funds in critical priorities for the United States, and that's in order to build a strong national economy. And they feel like you can do that with small businesses. We don't have the Lockheed Martins and the Boeings really on the cutting edge of innovation as much anymore. They're really kind of reaching back into the small business community to do that. You may not be able to see it, but that's what's kind of happening. The difference between the SBIR and STTR is one additional aim, and that is transfer of technology through a cooperative partnership between small businesses and research institutions. So it must be, we call it an RI. So the RI can be university, a federal, what we call FFRDC, Federal Research and Development Center, or a nonprofit research institution. So you have to have that institutional partner. You must have them, whereas in SBIR, you don't have to have any partners. And there are performance requirements in terms of how much work the small business needs to do and how much work the research institution needs to be doing. But the intent is just, we think that there's great stuff sitting in the universities, and if we give small businesses, some money and they work together, then those ideas can come out of the universities and go back into this commercialization loop that we're talking about. As I mentioned, there's just five agencies that participate, and NASA is one of them. So if you've looked at the solicitation already, you may have seen STTR solicitations. So SBIR these are the things that is, and I really want to reiterate this, because if you're thinking about your strategy and which topics to go after, really think about what this program is for. It's for you to have R&D funded in your company as a non-dilutive method of capital. So they're not going to take anything away from you. They're just going to give you money and give you some great stuff to move your technology ahead. You can investigate ways to commercialize ideas that you have, things that potentially were going to go out into the market in the public sector anyways, and you can investigate their application to the federal customer. Obviously, diversification of revenue, because you're receiving federal dollars, not just commercial dollars, which can be kind of nice in your portfolio, depending on what the economy is doing. A lot of the points, specifically this is mentioned explicitly for NASA and NSF, is that they want to solve societal and economic problems. So there's more to it than just we want something cool in the agency. They want to push the state of the art out a little bit, and again, going back to that innovation. It allows you to kind of break into government work. We've seen a lot of really great success stories with our clients in gathering SBIRs, moving technology along, commercializing it, finding additional government customers outside the SBIR program, and growing, therefore, as a company. And it is a path to sole source contracts, which is kind of the holy grail for government contractors, and those happen in the official or unofficial phase 3, depending on the agency. This place is not for you to just sell an invention to the government. If you already have a patented invention, you already have a prototype, you're like, hey, government, or you have 10 prototypes, you want to just start getting an order for something. That's not what this program's about. It's not guaranteed, it's highly competitive. You can't just sit there and do ones and twos and ones and twos. You have to really show progress towards commercialization. Even though it's for small businesses, it's not without requirements for reporting. There is plenty of potential for you to be audited. There's other government regulations, there's red tape, so there's some investment involved in making sure your business systems are adequate for accepting federal funds. And it's not a value engineering program. It's not just kind of tweaking current products just to, get them a little bit better. It's really more significant than that. If you have an existing technology, it needs kind of a significant modification change in order for you to be applicable. I want to point out the win ratios. I get asked this quite a bit, and I don't want you to get disappointed, but you can see this is from 2019. NASA's here in the purple circle. There was a 22% win rate for phase 1. And this is sort of average across the board. You can kind of see where we're at for these other civilian agencies. There's another handful of these, but it's competitive. There, in 2019 there was over 1,400 proposals that went in, and only 313 were selected. I will say that there's obviously a significant chunk, and they don't report on this, but just got kicked out because they were just not compliant. There's a lot of pieces, and you'll see that in a few minutes, you have to pay attention to. There are definitely situations where people just miss the mark in explaining why something's innovative or why they're state of the art, or they may not have a strong principal investigator who they didn't select the right strategy. There's a lot of reasons, and they receive their debrief, and they get really upset because the government didn't get it. The reviewer didn't get what I was trying to say. Well, that's not their problem. That's That's really your problem. That's your job, is to really convince them to understand. And then there's just funding limitations. Each of the centers get a chance to choose. So when I say centers, you know, we're talking like Goddard Space Center, for example. So we've got these centers around the country. They all have their different needs. They're competing for this one bucket of funds. And you might have an excellent proposal that was perfect and it just doesn't get funded. And that sometimes happens. And, you know, sometimes you have a proposal that is excellent, but, you know, there's just too many people who competed after that same topic. There's so many different reasons. We'll talk about strategies to get this like average percentage up. But there are a lot that just aren't compliant too. So that's kind of brings this down. Okay, so the NASA solicitation, the link is up here, and I'll click on it very briefly just so that you all can see it. But I believe NASA will be talking quite a bit about this tomorrow. But the NASA focus specifically, so we'll move away from just kind of SBIR in general. Their focus is about bringing innovation into NASA programs and NASA missions. And then secondly, okay, can we commercialize these things into NASA relevant commercial markets, right? So we'll just say SpaceX for an example. And is there a societal benefit to this? So there's a lot of, the SBIR program has a lot of different focuses, you know, depending on the agency. So this is specific to NASA. They really want you to think about your program. So if you're going to be successful, you have to understand what programs there are, understand what centers there are, what are they doing? You know, you can't just guess and just hope, oh, well, NASA flies in space, and so therefore I think we're applicable. That's not true. You have to really do some research. They want to see innovative, disruptive technologies. They want to see application of research from advancement in like that's conceptual all the way into the markets. They really want to see that path from phase 1 to phase 3. And again, they call, all the agencies pretty much call it early or seed stage research development. Again, commercialization potential, that's really important to them. And this is what they specifically, kind of going off what SBIR is not. NASA specifically says they don't want system studies, they don't want market research, they don't want routine engineering, they don't want the development of an existing product, they don't want to see anything that's already a proven concept, and they don't want a modification or of an existing product unless there's a really substantial innovation. So be very, very aware, because I would say a lot of the debriefs I've read about losing proposals is that they're, whatever, even if they're not intending to pitch but NASA has said, I felt that this was just development of an existing product, or I felt that this is already a proven concept. You know, I felt there was too much study happening here, you know, regardless if that was your intent or not. You have to be very careful that whatever you're saying doesn't come across as one of these items. And the ultimate of your phase 1 work should be the foundation and the basis for continued development, essentially to get you to a demonstration or prototype at the end of phase 2. So you're kind of like moving along, and you'll see that the technology readiness levels, the TRL levels that NASA pays very particular attention to. So when we talk about TRL levels, if you don't know what those are, they're here in the solicitation. Take a look at those. I would see most often we typically see a TRL level of 2 as an entry point, and maybe a 3 or 4 as an exit in and out of phase 1. So take a look when you're thinking about your technology, check out these technology readiness levels, see where you are. If you're well above a 3, you're not qualified for phase 1. If you're at a 3, you're probably qualified. If you're at a 1, I don't know. Might have to do some creative writing, but that's really important. I love the way that the solicitation is built. We just have these chapters here. Chapter 3 is the most important with the proposal preparation requirements. You know, there is some really important stuff here in the appendices. So I'll talk about these technology taxonomies. It's really important to understand what these are. Really quickly, I brought up the TRL levels. Just, it's probably important for us to talk about this, but really most folks come into the NASA program with the concept or the application already formulated. Or they might be a little further along and have done some analytical experimentation, but often we only have 6 months, so there's not much time for you to go from one level to another, but you should go in as one and come out the other side as a higher one. These are the potential transition and infusion opportunities. I love that NASA provides this table. Pay close attention to this. It gives each of the subtopics, and then it says which of kind of their focus areas, for lack of a better word, they really want you, this is where they're interested, this is where they're putting their money right now. And when I went through this, there was a ton of Moon to Mars stuff happening in here. So pay close attention. If your technology is really, you thought was going to be really important to the International Space Station, and you're saying, oh, well, I was going to go after this materials topic, well, that's not really coherent with what NASA's thinking right now. So pay close attention to all of this. And again, I would highly recommend, and NASA will say the same thing, read this entire thing. It seems like it's going to be a lot. If you've done SBIRs before, you can probably skip through stuff like program description, but it's super important. You have to go through this whole thing so that you don't mess up and skip something. Okay, let's see here. Some critical info. Again, we're demonstrating technical feasibility. Really important if you can, and you're having questions. They're supposed to be more particular to procurement questions, but there are questions that you can ask up until March 2nd. That is a week before the due date of 5 o'clock on the March 9th. The maximum contract value is $150,000. I say most of our clients try to go for $149,999, best that they can. The key is that your proposed scope of work and the tasks that you're going to accomplish have to seem like they equate to that much money, and they also have to seem like they could all be accomplished in 6 months. So don't just put these in here as default and then forget that somebody's not going to catch up on the fact that you're proposing a scope of work that's going to take 12 months and $300,000 or 2 months and $10,000. You know, those have to jive together. Quick statement on eligibility. If you're curious or you have some questions, and I particularly would suggest if you have a complicated ownership structure, to go to this compliance guide link here, and you'll get these slides afterwards. In general, a small business, I know a lot of people on the phone will think this is large, but you have to be less than 500 employees to participate. All the work has to be performed in the United States. You have to meet all the self-performance requirements if you're going to be subcontracting. The principal investigator has to be primarily employed by the small business concern. That's what SBC means. And the calculation of that employment is in the solicitation. And if you're owned in majority part by multiple venture capital, hedge funds, private equity, you're not eligible. NASA is very, very specific about that. However, JVs and limited partnerships are permitted. Again, take a look at any definitions and links and guides that you can get your hands on, and reach out to the SBDC if you have questions as well. And if you have participated in the program in the past with any agency, you have to have met all the transition benchmarks that they put in place for winning phase 2s and for commercializing to phase 3. Here is the process that we all go through. As just mentioned, review that solicitation, read it. It's really important that you understand what's in there, you don't skip anything. Determine which topic or topics you're going to go after. You can submit more than one proposal. The registrations and certifications must be done. I'll talk about that here in a second. Build your proposal and you submit it in their system, which is called EHB. The NASA team will evaluate it, and I'll talk about that evaluation here shortly. And then the selection notices will be made, and NASA's advertising that as approximately as May 2022. And the number of awards are just based upon the level of program funding. So we might have more than 313 this year. So as a consideration, you may get a selection notice in May 2022, but your award may not happen until July. So if you are looking for quick infusion of cash, this is not the place to be. But it's a really great place to be if this meets your business strategy. So we'll just say that you start in June or July, you end in December or January, and you put your phase 2 proposal in, and you have 2 years after that to work on this. Just kind of be aware of this timeline. The lag between a selection notice and an actual contract in hand is dependent upon the NASA Shared Services Center. They're the people who issue the contracts and do the negotiation with you, and they will ask you a lot of questions, and you might need to resubmit some stuff and provide clarification, and that can take some time before they actually give you a contract. Okay, registration in sam.gov. These are the NAICS codes that you need to have. Make sure you have your sam.gov immediately if you're planning on proposing this round. Get that all taken care of. Make sure your NAICS codes are in there. As I mentioned, NASA uses this electronic submission. It's called an Electronic Handbook, or EHB. So you will need to get registered in there. You will also need to register in the SBIR firm registry. This is at sbir.gov, and get information populated in there, including any commercialization information. So pay close attention in that login. You're going to get an SBC control number out of there, but there's also other company firm information you need to include. There's other certifications and standards, just as an FYI. Within EHB, there'll be some firm and proposal certifications. They want you to be aware of any FAR and NASA certifications and clauses, and you'll see that as an appendix in the solicitation. If you are doing software development, there are NASA software development standards. If you're doing human or animal subjects, there are standards for that. And if you're needing access to, I apologize, my cat decided to just jump on top of me. If you're needing access to a federal facility to do any of this work, you have to be careful of this Homeland Security directive. Typically, that's only applicable if you need 6 months worth of access. These proposals, or these contracts are only 6 months long. So I'm not assuming those will probably work for phase 1, but just be aware for phase 2. Okay, a lot of people say there's a lot of topics. I feel like I could fit in more than one. You can apply and try to write different proposals. But what I like to say is if you really only have the bandwidth to propose one topic, one proposal, really take a look at the awards and abstracts that are posted on nasa.gov. You can look at this link, this advanced search link. Take a look. Have you seen keywords or competitors or different mission objectives? Take a look and see what they've already awarded. If somebody is already doing something exactly like you're doing, the chances of you winning that topic, unless that company's been failing, might be kind of low. If they're already doing something, but you are state of the art beyond what's already been awarded, then that's definitely a great place to be. Absolutely communicate with NASA when you're allowed to do so. Ask questions, just try to poke your nose as much as you can, get POCs. If something doesn't work this round, then start talking to NASA throughout the year and try again next year and see who you can communicate with. And then again, review that Appendix C I just showed you about the transition and infusion opportunities. Remember, NASA really wants to know that you understand them, that you have looked into what their missions are, that you understand where this technology could fit and how. And if you fail to look at this appendix, you won't be able to do that. This is a big slide, but I wanted to show you what all goes into a proposal, and I'm sure NASA is going to talk about this a little bit more, but obviously there's proposal contact information, the certifications we talked about. There's a proposal summary if you want to talk about kind of like an abstract element. It has non-proprietary data because that's what gets posted on the web, and that's what I was just telling you to go look at for people who've already been awarded. You will need a very detailed budget. This budget is to the point where you will need pay rates, education level, type of, well, for an example, type of engineer. Are they a mechanical engineer, an aerospace engineer? You'll need all of this detail about the people from your team, from your company, I should say, working. If you have subcontractors or consultants, you're going to need letters of commitment from them, and as well as the best proposal that you can get from them that has enough detail. So NASA will ask you to either provide that detail at the time, and you kind of have to put it into this online form for your subcontractor's information, or you just allow NASA to contact your subcontractor directly, but you will have to upload a legitimate proposal from a subcontractor or consultant, or if you have a foreign vendor form, that actually has to get uploaded. The budget requires you to break things out like materials and equipment. You will have to put quotes. You'll have to see if those have been competitively sourced, if they're going to be used only on this project. And by the way, the answers to both of those are yes. You need to competitively source all your other direct costs, and they need to be only used on this project if you're asking for money for them. Obviously, there is a technical proposal. There's also a briefing chart. There's templates for both the technical proposal and the briefing chart. If you are using any NASA patents or NASA IP, you'll have to have a license application. NASA does have quite a bit of IP that they allow companies to come and license, so you can take a look at that. If you're going to be asking for technical and business assistance, that needs to be selected, and you need to provide a pretty detailed proposal letter from your TABA provider. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There's an I-Corps interest form. We'll talk about that. And then there's some firm level forms that you complete in EHB. And they're for, if you have multiple proposals, they all just, this information just kind of goes in with all the proposals. So you only have to fill this stuff out once. And it should stay in your EHB registration so that when you come back in next year, that stuff will just need to be updated rather than put in fresh. So then finally, all that stuff is in the system. You get no errors, and then the designated small business representative and the PI have to endorse the proposal. And there are ways around there are ways to get around the PI endorsing themselves. You can have a representative endorse on their behalf. Specifically to note that any letters of interest or letters of support, which I generally always suggest, are not required or desired. They're not considered. So don't provide those to NASA. That's not what they want. And they don't want any samples or videotapes or slides or anything ancillary. Don't send that in. Only send in 1 through 11, what you have up above. Specifically with the technical proposal for NASA, I wanted to point out that obviously SBIR across the board, it's innovative, relevant to the current state of the art. That's regardless of what agency. But again, NASA wants to see in your technical proposal that there's merit there, that there's feasibility of this innovation, and it is relevant and significant to NASA. And the topic description will give you some clues to help you write around that. So what I do when I review proposals is often I will go back to the topic and I'll read that, and I'll read a client's proposal, and I'll say, I don't see how you're addressing XYZ. You know, NASA said they wanted to see this, or NASA says they're interested in this, and I don't see that in your proposal. You know, so that is a job for you to do on your own. You also need to provide a preliminary strategy, again, for your commercialization. So even in a phase 1, they want to know technical, market, and business factors that are required for you to be successful. They want to know the NASA relevant commercial markets that you've already explored. And they also want to know about other potential markets and customers. You know, they can probably put 2 and 2 together about NASA relevant markets. And they can probably think about other potential markets. What you don't want to have happen is have them think of things that you did not address and put in your proposal. And they can say, oh, well, did you know you missed this? You don't want to see that in a losing debrief. Some budget strategies to think about. I mentioned earlier that there's this kind of self-performance threshold that we talk about. It must be 67%. So you need to do 67% of the work on your own. I get a lot of questions about whether 1099s can be counted as direct labor and self-performance. No, only W-2s can be. So if you have a bunch of 1099s, you might need to turn them into W-2s if you win. The PI has to be primarily employed. So both for the self-performance and the PI calculation for primary employment, you'll see those calculations in the solicitation. So take a look. NASA does not want any travel to be proposed in phase 1. You will have an option to click on it, but don't propose any. They don't want to see it. The rates may require backup, and so a huge thing we see all the time is that people have not proposed real rates. And it may not necessarily be obvious in the proposal, but this thing gets to award and the contracting officer gets a hold of it, and they can't validate the prices that you've proposed are reasonable. And so they might ask for pay stubs. They may ask for the basis for how you built your indirect rates. My biggest piece of advice here is do that now. Don't wait because if you didn't, first of all, if your whole budget will get messed up and they will take money away from you. I think that's probably the best way to put it. You won't get your full 150K. You know, you might get stuck. I've seen threats of contracts getting pulled because people just look like they're being shady, and that's not really their intent. They just didn't think about this. But most specifically, get your pay rates nailed down. And if you don't have pay stubs yet for people, by the time negotiations go around, you're going to have to prove how you got to that pay rate and how you're going to pay those people. And definitely get your indirect rates developed. And, you know, that's a super important part. And then all of these costs and all the backup will be required to be uploaded into EHB. So I'd very much suggest before you start building your budget and gathering things is to go into EHB and see what that budget looks like, see what kind of information they're going to be asking for. You know, there are some tips and tricks to kind of skip the system a little bit, but skipping the system doesn't necessarily always help you when you win and somebody's asking you for evidence. So try to fill out everything that you can, even if you found a way to kind of like trick the system into accepting the proposal. That's not going to help you when you hopefully win. Okay, selection criteria. This is really important to think about when you're writing your proposal in terms of if you feel like you're weak in certain areas, where do you spend your time to improve your proposal? So first, they'll do an administrative review, just kind of make sure everything is compliant. You know, you haven't gone over the page count, for example. They'll do a determination about your technical responsiveness. You know, how good are you of a match to the topic that you've proposed? And then they'll do a technical evaluation, which will consist of these 4 factors. So technical merit and feasibility, the qualifications and experience, what you've got going on, effectiveness of your proposed work plan. So again, this is going to be a reviewer saying, yeah, I agree that this proposed work plan is going to get you from A to B, or yeah, I agree that this work plan, statement of work, same sort of thing, is going to help move this project along, or I think you can get it done in 6 months. So that's what that effectiveness means. And then commercialization potential, that's the other factor. Finally, there's a price evaluation. Again, you're given the ceiling, and pretty much everybody tends to just hit that ceiling. So it's kind of just thumbs up, thumbs down sort of evaluation for that. There is actual scoring, and then they kind of put a bunch of most highly rated proposals into a bucket. So there are these numerically scoring for factors 1, 2, and 3, and then an adjectival kind of saying like thumbs up, thumbs down sort of thing for the price. And there are these points factors, factor 1 is worth 50 points and 2 and 3 are 25. And then you get a score. And then all those highest proposals will be prioritized. And then those will end up getting their own kind of scoring within the prioritization. And then they will take those and make recommendations to the source selection official for final determination. So you can see there's a lot of gates to go through with NASA. So pay attention to these scoring and these points. Don't try to be lowest price, because that doesn't make any difference here in this program. Really quickly about I-Core. So this is a partnership with NSF. If you've ever done an NSF SBIR, they offer this opportunity too. But this is really just training for commercialization. It's a super cool program. They kind of put firms through a version of like a lean startup, lean launchpad sort of program. And the goal is to kind of help develop the business model and hypothesize on customer development. So that's really important to help you in your phase 2 proposal, truly, and help you get to commercialization. So what they offer through NASA is this Beat the Odds boot camp that you have to be required to participate in this boot camp, and it's 7 weeks long, 10 to 20 hours a week, and you elect to be on your proposal about whether or not you want to be considered for I-Core, because what NASA will do is they'll take the proposals that have won and those people who have selected that they want to be considered for I-Core, and then they'll award 25 grants. So this is outside of your contract for up to $10,000 to participate in this 7-week program. So we have clients who really have loved this program, and we've had clients who have declined the program because they don't have 10 to 20 hours a week to participate. So that's something to consider whether or not you click that button, but it is a very beneficial program. And you'll also be asked if you want to elect for technical and business assistance, which is TABA. If you haven't heard about this before, this is also a really great thing that the program offers. NASA specifically will supplement your award up to $6,500 to help you commercialize. So what you can use TABA for is assistance with sales, IP protection, market research, regulatory plans, helping with getting access to a paid subscription service for technical and business literature. So the whole point is to help you make better technical decisions as you move through the TRL levels, solving any technical problems that would prevent you from moving into commercialization stage, and then minimizing technical risks. But mostly what most people use it for is really this market research, market validation, IP protection, and regulatory compliance stuff. And that's where we see people using it. NASA is one of the agencies that does not have an internal TABA provider to default to. So if you want to utilize this TABA, you have to find an outside consulting firm that can provide this for you and can provide all the requisite information for your proposal. Okay, that is it. There's a lot there, but we have about 12 minutes to talk through some Q&A and just ask some proposal specific questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I know there's a lot that goes into this, so I think it's super helpful to have it at least laid out in this way. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Questions that have come in that we'll dig into. If anyone has additional questions, please enter them into the chat. So the first one I wanted to get to, let's see where it went. Can you explain the difference in NASA's interpretation between proof of concept and technical feasibility?
Well, that's a really good question. So from my experience, NASA is going to lean a little bit more towards technical feasibility. They want to see a little bit more meat on the bones, for lack of a better word. those terms can be pretty interchangeable. And I think that there's a lot of strategy with NASA in writing around the current TRL level of where you are, and not really focusing on whether it's proof of concept or technical feasibility, but whether or not you really truly fit into like a TRL level 2, and how you can kind of make that pitch. So we don't really focus on proof of concept or technical feasibility. We just really focus on, is this a fit for phase 1, and are we in that TRL level 2 space?
Great, thank you. There's a question here about the indirect cost rates. So for NASA, is there a suggested indirect cost rate or minimum rate?
You need to calculate your own. There's no such thing as a suggested rate unless you're doing a grant with like NIH or NSF, and they tell you what your rate has to be if you don't have an approved rate. So minus those couple of agencies, and for just good business practice, you have to actually calculate your own rate. What is it? And if you don't know what your rate is, even if you're not doing government business, then you don't know how much you're actually spending on projects. So the best rate is the one that's actually the most feasible for the time period that you're actually going to be performing the work.
Got it. So there's another budget question, which might not be the best fit for you. And we do have another specialist that helps with this too, but I will ask anyway. Is there a cap for hardware budget? They thought they had seen something about a max of $5,000, but they aren't sure.
So that's a tricky question. On other agencies, there absolutely is a max for hardware budget. I don't recall seeing that one in the solicitation. Just take a look at the budget section in the solicitation to see what that might be. I will say for phase 1, NASA is not necessarily expecting a lot of hardware to be purchased. You're not building your prototype yet, so it has to be a reasonable amount of hardware, materials, or equipment in order for you to perform the proposed scope of work. So if you feel like that's going to go over 5,000, just double check the solicitation. I know for a fact other agencies do have that limitation though.
Great, thank you. So this person is asking about I-Corps, and if they've already participated for another phase 1, is it still possible to apply again for it?
If you've already participated, oh, that's a really great question. In the solicitation, there's a link to the I-Corps page, and I was looking at that this morning, and I didn't see anything about duplicative participation. I would say that if you have already been in the program, and in this proposal, you click that you want to be opted in to be selected again, it might be, if it's not explicitly stated, it might just be up to the evaluators on whether or not they would select you to participate again. I would think that because space is really limited, if they have access to that information, you may not get selected again. But also know that you can click to opt in to I-Corps now on the proposal, and that you don't have to participate if you're selected. Things can change. So it's worth a try unless you see specifically. But this morning I didn't see a number of times limitation on that.
Great, thank you. All right, so this person kind of has a 3-part question that all of them are a little different. But the first one is there a good source for previous successful SBIRs? So I know we shared that link before. Is that the place for people to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 2 places. The link I sent, I have in this presentation, will take you to the winning abstracts for NASA. You can also get to NASA winning abstracts, maybe different database functionality in SBIR.gov. So it just kind of depends on the lag time, NASA is pretty good because there's a year in between solicitations, and so there should be 2021 abstracts in there right now.
Awesome, thank you. So another part of this question that's kind of separate, but is NASA looking for a competitive analysis in the market? And then kind of a separate one too, is using current market rates good, or should they use government rates?
Yes, competitive analysis is really important. You really need to show the government that you know who's out there, that you can show that you are different and you are more innovative than what's currently out there. When we talk about government rates and market rates, most of these phase one proposals are labor. And so your rates should be pay rates. So that's really, there's no government rate or market rate. It's a pay rate. There should be no product that you're selling. So there should be just no, here's the widget if I sell to the government, and here's the widget I sell to the, the commercial marketplace, and they're two different rates. That's not a thing that we consider for SBIR program. If you are justifying, the only time I can see that there's some sort of rate justification is if you have a vendor that you're buying stuff from and they're out there in the commercial marketplace and they've provided you a quote and they've provided you, say, their GSA schedule rate, that's great. You definitely want to show the government that you're getting a good deal. Hopefully that answers the question. There is no government or market rate. You provide actual costs in your budget, and those are marked up with your indirect rate and your profit or fee, which is typically 7%.
Great, thank you. All right, so this question, let's see where it went. They're wondering why there was a change in the program from 1099 to W-2.
There has not been a change in the program. That's always been the rule. If you've got through the program where you've used 1099s as direct labor, then you were lucky. You slipped through the cracks. You can use 1099s. They just don't count as your self-performance. They don't count as you working as a self-performer. They count as a consultant. When you go through negotiations with the contracting officers, at least specifically, in my experience, they pick up on that fact, and you'll get dinged if you don't have enough self-performance happening, and those people are not W-2s. A 1099 is not a direct labor cost because they're not a role.
I think you might have cut out for that last sentence. Could you repeat the last thing you said?
Yeah, 1099s, because they're not employees, are not considered direct labor of the company. They can be indirect labor, or they're another direct cost.
Got it. Okay, so this person is asking about the phase 2 and when the release is going to be and the deadline for the phase 2.
The deadline for the phase 2 is the same day as the last day of your phase 1. And so the information that you have for phase 2 will all be provided to you when the time comes. If that's the best, I wouldn't worry about it right now. Most people start preparing their phase 2 proposals probably about a month before their phase 1 ends. But just be aware that it'll be 6 months from your award date that your phase 2 proposals due. NASA does it differently than other agencies.
Got it. Good to know. All right, well, we're almost up on time. So Stephanie, I want to give you the floor if you have any kind of parting thoughts for us. If as a best practice you think people should do, what thing do you want them to take away from this right now?
That's a great question. I would spend the time really reading the solicitation. I know there's a lot of words, but really read it and pay very, very particular attention to chapter 3, because those are your proposal instructions. If you miss one tiny thing, you'll be kicked out, regardless of how innovative your technology is. So just be very, very careful there, and really focus on that innovative piece when you're writing your technical proposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I know we might not have gotten to everyone's questions, so if we didn't answer your question, please feel free to reach out again. We'll do our best to get you the answer to that. We will send out the slides and a copy of the recording of the presentation today. So look for that, and thank you everyone for being here, and thank you, Stephanie, for presenting today.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks everybody for being here.